made the necessary moves to get back amongst the nation's elite, there's a player that we're not talking about that will probably be the key to that answer. Let's get started here.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for listening to Locked On Wildcats, your team every day, and making it your first listen. Appreciate you all. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, we've got a lot to talk about this show, but first, we're going to talk about the lifeblood that is Arizona athletics, and that is Arizona basketball. We all know that. I'm not breaking any news to any of you, as you are all smarter than me. So, let's talk about it, though. Arizona the last 2 years has been amongst the nation's elite. Tommy Lloyd has taken over, and he is the all-time winningest coach in college basketball history over his first 2 seasons. That's good. But we have found out, though, that Arizona does have some limitations when it comes to the tournament. We've seen that now a few times now. Previous first year's team where you had Ben Mathurin, you had Christian Coloco, you had Dalen Terry, you had 2 first-round picks there and an early second-round pick. And let's be honest here. Yes, Arizona made the Sweet 16, but they played like crap. Against Wright State, you had 1 good half. Against TCU, you didn't play well and still won off Ben Mathurin. And then against Houston, you got punked. Then this past year, yes, I believe that Arizona did outperform expectations. I think it's impossible to argue that case. But let's be honest here. Once the tournament came, Princeton became physical. Princeton became tough with Arizona, and that was a major issue for the University of Arizona. Again, I am not breaking any news there. You cannot lose to Princeton. Now, I think some of the issues in play are pretty easy to discuss or pretty easy to figure out. First, yes, the Arizona, while talented, has some soft players. I don't think I'm really breaking any news right there. People talk about Kerr Kriisa all the time. He yaps, he's in the face. Kerr Kriisa was soft because generally Kerr was not a good defender. And more so than anything else, Kerr was also the player who generally started talking a bunch when the game was out of reach. Yes. So, and when the chips were down, Kerr wasn't that dude. I mean, you could say he was injured. You can say whatever you want to say. The guy was 3 for 24 in his NCAA tournament games with 8 turnovers and 4 assists. That will not get it done. And like we just talked about, it's not like he was there for the defensive side of the game. And then Azuolas Tubelis, a much, much better player than Kerr Kriisa. I don't think I'm breaking any news right there. But Zoo in big minutes was not really the dude. And again, he's another guy. Come NCAA tournament time, he struggled mightily. He struggled mightily this past year. His first year, to the point where he wasn't even playing in the NCAA tournament. And then this past year, against Princeton, yeah, he put up better numbers, but nobody really nobody looked at Zoo and said that he wanted that moment. And you'd watch him, and he'd have an open 16-footer, and he would pass it up for a 14-footer, which he would feebly attempt that would be blocked. So those guys are gone. So what Arizona basketball is trying to do now is, I think, trying to marry some of the skill that Tommy Lloyd's players have with some of the toughness that is required. Nastiness is required. I do like that term for this squad, and I think that's where you're going to see it. And this starts with getting tougher. So let's look at possibly the starting lineup right now and possibly inject a few names into the starting lineup and just kind of see how that fits, and we will work backwards from there. First, Kylan Boswell is going to run the point. This is something, again, Tommy Lloyd has been an A-plus coach. I'm not going to sit here and say that anything that he hasn't done hasn't been great because, again, record speaks for himself. He's 61-11, and I'm sitting here on a podcast at 7 o'clock in the morning talking to you about it. So, take that for what it's worth. But Boswell should have played more last year. I don't think that I'm breaking any news right there. Kylan Boswell 100% should have played more. He's physical. He can shoot the ball, and he can also get he can get to where he wants on the court. Plus, players respect him, which I think is a big thing in college basketball. And by the end of the year, he's probably the best shooter on the team. So, that goes in there. Now, he obviously was young last year. We all know that. The next step, though, for him, I think, will be becoming that all-conference player. I believe that he can be an all-conference player this coming year. He is, again, I think from a statistical perspective, a statistical progression, something like 16 points, 4 or 5 assists while playing dogged defense. He's got that in him right there. And again, he didn't even start this past year, but he is going to be the key to the Ferrari right there. Key to the Ferrari. He will be the guy that Tommy Lloyd is handing the keys to right there. And I think that he's going to step up, and I think he's going to step up in a big, big way. Now, so you got him in the backcourt, which I think is going to be a dramatic upgrade from Kirk Kriisa. Then next to him, then you also got a little bit of a bulldog right there in Jayden Bradley. Jayden Bradley also some of the same physical dimensions, a little bit taller, probably about 6'3", 200 pounds, something like that. But also a player who just kind of fits that new build of what you're looking for at the University of Arizona. Tough, physical, all the way across the board. And again, I get a lot of people that'll say, well, he only averaged 6 points and 3 rebounds or 3 assists at Alabama. First of all, he was a freshman, so 6 and 3 isn't bad. Second of all, Alabama was probably the most talented team in the country last year. Now, again, that administration right there has very little integrity right there. So I'm glad that he got out of Alabama right there. And he's back in the A here at the University of Arizona. But you got both those guys in the backcourt right there. Both, like I said, both physical, both tough. I think they're both going to be double-digit scorers. As far as a point progression for Pella Larson, I'm looking at something like, for Jayden Bradley, I'm looking for something like 11 and 3, something like that. And what he also gives you is he gives you some position flexibility, which we very much like around here, and that he can play the 2. And on top of that, if Kylan Boswell were to leave for the NBA this coming year or after this year, Jayden Bradley slides right over. What Jayden Bradley also allows you to do, though, is prepares you for that event, that possibility. I almost said eventuality, that possibility that Kylan Boswell leaves, because 2024, you've got a massive recruiting class coming in, and it's going to be all hands on deck. You need to have a point guard there, and I didn't believe that Arizona was getting to Don Thomas or Zoom Diallo either way, 2 5-star point guards. So I'm more than okay with this. I think this fits the bill of what you're looking for. Now, something else that fits the bill of what you're looking for is Built Bar. Now, might say a lot of people, they hate going to the gym. They dread going to the gym for a variety of reasons, but one of it is all right, I just got done working hard, and now I've got to go eat something that tastes terrible. Built Bar is to the rescue right here. Built Bar tastes like a candy bar. I like candy a great deal. You like candy a great deal. Check it out, Built Bar, because again, there's nothing more satisfying than a good workout with something really good to eat. On top of that, you can check out Built Bar at all of your local GNCs. GNC has them stacked to the shelf for a reason right there. And again, Built Bar. Now, there's next we're going to talk about one of the more mercurial players at the University of Arizona and what to really expect from him and the front court. All right, it's time to talk Pella Larson. My bad, Pella. All right, now, I always preface this by saying, because information is knowledge, I always preface this, though, with I was wrong about Pella Larson. There's no other way around it. I thought when Pella Larson got here, he was terrible and he would never be good. Pella Larson is good. He is not terrible. So Mike Luke takes the L right there. But we do know what Pella can do and what Pella can't do, what Peloton can do right there, or the Swedish pinball, as we call when he's bouncing around on the court. But the first thing that we know about Pella is that Pella is a very good athlete. Pella has hops, Pella is strong, and Pella's got bounce. Pella got all those things. And he's a really good defender, and he can finish around the hoop because of his strength and all of that. Pella is a good player. Pella is, but Pella, I don't know how much better Pella can get. And I think that's a little bit of the frustration, a little bit of the concern with U of A fans is how much better can Pella get? Now, I think the one thing that is interesting with Mr. Larson is that he comes from a basketball background. His pops played, obviously. And what I don't understand is why Pella shoots a set shot and Pella can't dribble. Those are things that are generally worked on at a young age. And for whatever reason, it wasn't. So what does that do? That limits him. Pella's never going to be able to bring the ball up the court and get into his rhythm and shoot a three. That will never happen. He's not capable of doing that, mainly because he can't dribble, but also because he has a very slow release on his set shot, which also eliminates any possibility of him running off screens, getting up quick shots. He's never going to be able to do the Kyle Korver thing. And that's because of like I said, just a very curious skill strategy growing up. But let's focus on what he can do. And what he can do is he can be one of the best perimeter defenders in the conference, and he can finish around the hoop. From a statistical perspective, I think that Pella can get you about 13 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Again, not an NBA player. He'll make a lot of money overseas. I would love to have Pella Larson's future. I do not have Pella Larson's future. But that is kind of where it's at with Pella Larson. I think, now listen, Tommy Lloyd has basically been spot on everything that he has said so far about players and about what he expects from them. I'll never forget when he came in here and Arizona hadn't won a tournament game in 5 years. And he said, I know what good teams look like. This is a good team. And he said that he thought Christian Coloco could be the defensive player of the year in the conference. Very, very, very astute right there from the Tommy gun. He did oversell Pella Larson a little bit in that he thought, but that doesn't mean that Pella Larson isn't a good player, though. So that's your perimeter right there. And all three of those guys, what we like about it, though, is all three of those guys are tough. Kylan Boswell's tough. Jayden Bradley's tough. And Pella Larson's tough. So you got a tough perimeter right there. Out with the old, in with the new. Now, let's look up front. One thing about it is we know that Umar Ballo is going to start. Umar Ballo, leader of men, Umar Ballo out there. Umar Ballo, another guy that I was wrong on. When Umar Ballo came to the University of Arizona, I thought he was going to be roster filler, essentially. I thought that he would kind of be your Eugene Edgerson type where he throws some elbows around, gets involved in the fray a little bit, and then goes out. I did not see him being somebody that was going to be 15 points, 7 rebounds, or 14.7 rebounds, and getting the MVP of the Maui Invitation or the Maui Invitational. I did not ever see that happening, but he's turned out to be a very good player. Now the question is, how much better can he get? Because he's in the best physical shape of his life, but there are a few things about him that are, I don't want to say drawbacks. Drawbacks aren't the right word, but there are some things about him. He's a little heavy-footed out there. And by heavy-footed, I mean that he is, again, there's not a lot of quick twitch explosion out of Big Umar right there. That will never be his thing. But he can finish around the hoop fairly well when he's healthy. Again, he's always going to struggle with the length a little bit. It'll be interesting to see, though, and I don't know how I feel about this. Can he make that next step? Can he become 17-8? That I don't know. That I don't know, but it would be if he can become 17-8, then that gives you even more room to be able to look at Arizona and extrapolate out a team that could go far in the NCAA tournament. I think that he's probably tapped out, but as we talked about, I'm batting 0 for 2 on Pella Larson and Umar Ballo, so take it for what it's worth. But Big Umar has been a big-time improvement here for the University of Arizona, and look forward to having him. We could potentially get Umar for 2 more years right there. Again, we like when the leader of men stays around the U of A and continues to improve in the manner in which he has. So again, Big Umar right there. Big shout-outs to Big Umar as well. As just for the progression that he's made, it's been nothing short of astounding. Now, those are the 4 guys. Those are all 4 starters are set in stone. Now, who could be the 5th guy? Who could be the surprise player off the bench? We'll talk about that on the other side. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. All right, now we are going to talk about who that 5th starter would be. And ideally, that 5th starter would be Keshad Johnson out of San Diego State. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that Keshad Johnson is being recruited very hard by the U of A. He was just on campus. He will now be visiting Kentucky. Grr. But that, again, is the epitome of what I think Tommy Lloyd is looking for. Tommy Lloyd is looking for tough players. Tommy Lloyd is looking for players who can get you about, who can go in there and push you around, and when the going gets tough, not really fold. And that's what he's looking for right there. I don't think I'm breaking any news. Keshad Johnson is the epitome of that. Now, anybody at San Diego State that averaged 7 and 6 and is 6'7", 235, I am more than okay with. We will sign them up and we will embrace them. So with Keshad Johnson right there, that's kind of what we're looking at. Now, he would fit in, I think, perfectly, because then all of a sudden you got a roster of 5 tough guys, a roster of 5 physical basketball players out there, which would be a big departure. And again, this guy also put up 13 and 4 in the national title game. He can clearly play. That's why I'm excited to see what he could possibly bring to the table. So if you had a starting lineup of Kylan Boswell, Jayden Bradley, Pella Larson, Keshad Johnson, and Umar Ballo, that team goes into every game not being pushed around, and that would be something that I think a lot of Arizona fans would be good with. Now, Arizona feels good about their chances with Keshad Johnson, but again, anytime Kentucky's in the picture, you got to kind of take all of that with a grain of salt right there. So that's your starting. That would be ideally your starting 5 right there. Now, keep in mind, as we talked about, Pella doesn't do very good. Pella doesn't do very well starting. Maybe he gets over that this coming year. We'll find out. And then off the bench, you got to keep in mind there's going to be a lot of moving pieces here for the U of A. I would very much keep an eye on guys who are in the NBA draft or who have declared for the NBA draft, and because I think that's where Arizona is going to try to find its next couple players. Now, kind of like Courtney Ramey last year. Courtney Ramey was that one dude who, played 4 years at Texas, went through the NBA tryouts or camp, whatever you want to call it, and then decided to move on to another school, came to the University of Arizona, and had another nice year. Now, but keep in mind here, when you get guys like this that are in the portal, that are declaring and coming back, like Doug Gottlieb always says, there are no pros in the portal because they wouldn't be in the portal. They would be in the pros. But that doesn't mean that you can't find some really good players. Look, Texas, Kansas State built an entire roster off guys like this, and they went pretty far and they did pretty well. So that's where Arizona is going to probably be looking to add. But let's not talk about the players they're looking to add. Let's talk about the players they already have. And up front, Henry Vasar. We love Henry on this show. Henry was probably a little bit too overhyped coming in out of coming in from Estonia. But Henry also has a lot of things that you like about him. He's about 7 foot, runs like a gazelle, can block shots. He didn't show this in games, and I got a lot of people mocking me about this, but he also is a pretty good shooter. I know it doesn't appear that he's a good shooter, but he's a pretty good shooter. Henry's got to make that next step. Tommy Lloyd has said that, but Henry's, in my opinion, has to be 9-4 this coming season. If Henry can be 9-4 or something like that, then Arizona is in some pretty good shape right there. And there's no reason that he can't. Now, again, a lot of times when you're dealing with international players, you worry about their confidence level. Are they, where are they? How are they in the grand scheme of things? How are they, developing? It's going to be a big offseason for Big Henry. But again, Henry's got a lot to like about him. Henry's got a lot that he can continue to improve upon. Henry has the proverbial upside. So you'd like to see him in that big man mix as well. You would love to see him in that big man mix. The other guy, my guy, Dylan Anderson. Now, Dylan Anderson, a lot of people in this community have written off Dylan Anderson. I have not. I love Dylan Anderson. I think that, listen, he's not going to be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but he's 7 foot. He's 240. He's a fairly decent athlete for his size, not a goon. And he can play. And I have always felt that if Dylan Anderson is patient, that Dylan Anderson can be a multi-year starter at Arizona. I have seen nothing to change my opinion on that, but we're going to have to see how that one does play out. He's also a guy that you always hear rumors about. Maybe he leaves. Maybe he goes to another school. Just don't go to GCU because you already stole Duke Brennan from ASU in the conference. So we don't want any more of that. But I like Dylan though. I think Dylan. I would like to see Dylan be able to make that jump to where he could get, 10 minutes a game this year, 10 to 12 minutes per game. And then you keep pushing that and pushing that and pushing that. Now kids don't do this in this day and age, but I would also very much like for Dylan Anderson to redshirt because I think that he could be, another year getting stronger, getting more physical, getting more skilled, I think would definitely help him right there. But I get it. In this day and age, people aren't really looking to redshirt there. So, and Philly B, everybody asks me about Philly B. I have no clue what to make of Philly B. Now, if Philly B were to be, if he were to be a rotation guy at some point, cool. If he were to not be on the team next year because he's not good enough, cool. I don't know. Can't sit here and say. Very rarely do I not have an opinion on a player. I have no opinion on Philly B. Although every time I eat at Filiberto's, I always tag Philly B in it because, again, he needs to be getting an NIL with Filiberto's. There is no way around it. Philly B for Filiberto's. Okay. So that's kind of where we are right now. Now, there's going to be a couple names to drop here shortly, international guy. But I think Arizona, I don't believe Arizona is a national title contender. I just don't believe that they have enough just raw dynamic skill. Teams that win national titles generally have multiple pros. I don't know that Arizona has multiple pros, but I do believe that Arizona is going to be tougher. I am excited to see what that next step, though, is for Arizona basketball because I do believe that there is a next step. I also am a big fan, though, of Tommy Lloyd. Tommy Lloyd also bringing in tougher players and, understanding that we got to be skilled, but we got to be tough as well. And I think you're going to continue to see that evolve over the years. But that's kind of where we're at. Arizona, though, I think a top 15 to 25 team, probably not a national title contender. Who knows, though? I've been wrong in the past, and I will definitely be wrong in the future. But, all right, you guys all have a great rest of your Wednesday. I will be back with you tomorrow. As always, thanks for keeping